Okay, hello and welcome to another video about quadratics. What we're going to be looking at today is completing the square, which is a technique for getting quadratics into vertex form. So if you remember from when we were graphing quadratics, if they looked like this, sorry, just erase that, make sure I get this right. If they look like this is what we call vertex form, and if you remember when we drew those, we found that they always had a vertex at the coordinates specified by h and k. So this method, completing the square, is all about taking a regular quadratic equation and putting it into this form, because then it's easy to plot. To start with, what I want to do is just take this form and just expand it out into a regular quadratic and see how that what that tells us about this method completing the square. So let's start by expanding it out. So if I've got x take h in brackets squared, that's the same as x take h multiplied by x take h. And if we expand that using FOIL, and notice that I'm just keeping the a out the front for now, that's x squared take, let's do it in two steps, take x times h, take x times h plus h squared, and I've still got my plus k on the end. And then if I simplify this down, I'll get 2h multiplied by x plus h squared plus k. Okay, and now what we can notice if we have a look at this is that the coefficient of x is 2h, and the number at the end of this part of the quadratic is h squared. So there's a relationship between those 2 points, and that is the key thing to understand about completing the square. So what we need to remember is that this number here, this h squared on the end, is half the coefficient of x, because the coefficient of x is 2h. Actually, it's negative 2h. And I'm not worrying about the negative sign for now, because you'll find out when you see the method that it works both ways, whether it's positive or negative. But the key thing is that the coefficient of x is 2h. Over here I've got h, so that's half of the coefficient of x squared. Okay, and that is the key thing to understand about completing the square. When we do the example, it will make some more sense. Okay, let's do an example on that note. So let's say that y equals x squared plus 6 plus 7. And we want to get that into vertex form so that we can plot it. Okay, well, to start off with, at the moment, the coefficient of x is 6. We can't complete the square using the 7 because 7 is not equal to half of 6 squared. So we're going to have to modify this equation a little bit in order to get it into this form. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to say, okay, the coefficient of x is 2h. So I'm going to say 2h is equal to 6. That means that h must be equal to 3, which then tells me that h squared is going to be equal to 9. Now here's the little trick. This is the fancy trick that we play when we're doing completing the square. We're going to go y equals x squared plus 6x, and my trick is that I'm just going to add in h squared, which is 9. Since I've added it in, I'm also going to take it, because if I add something and take it, that's fine, because it just gets me back to where I'm started from. So I'm allowed to do that in the equation. I can't get rid of my plus 7 yet though. I've still got to keep that on the end. So I've just inserted a +9 and a take 9 in the middle of the equation. Now, here's where our little trick comes into play. If I have a look at this part of the equation, this is what we call a perfect square. So this is in the format that we're looking for. I've got 2h as my coefficient for x and h squared on the end. So that first part of the equation, hopefully I don't run out of room here, can actually be factorized as x plus 3 squared. Because if you think about it, if anytime we're factorizing, we want two factors of 9 that will add up to 6. And of course, in this case, the two factors of 9 that add to 6 are +3 and +3. So my only factor is x plus 3. So it's x plus 3 squared. I can't forget about these numbers on the end. So the -9 and the +7, I've got to do something with those. So I'm going to make that take 2. And wouldn't you know it, that looks suspiciously like vertex form, which is what we were after all along. So from this, if I wanted to know my vertex, I could say that it's at -3 and -2. Because remember, if we go back to our vertex form, it's x take h, whereas I've got x plus 3, so it's adding 3 is the same as taking -3. So h is -3 and k is -2. Okay, so now we've got it in vertex form. I'll do another example in a moment. Okay, let's do a second example, which is a little bit hairier. So we're going to say that y equals 2x squared, take 20x plus 14. So what's a little bit trickier about this is that I've got the 2 out the front. So that means that my first step is actually going to be to take the 2 out as a common factor. Conveniently, 20 and 14 are both evenly divisible by 2, so that becomes 2 multiplied by, in brackets, x squared, take 10x plus 7. So I've just divided each term by 2 and taken the 2 out the front. Okay, now let's just worry about the quadratic equation that's in the brackets and do our completing the square on that. So in this case, we are going to say that, and I might just write it over here, 2h, remember that's the coefficient of x, is equal to 10. So h is equal to 5, and therefore h squared is equal to 25. So I'm going to keep it all in the brackets because we're keep taking the 2 out and not worrying about it for now. So that's x squared, take 10x, and now I'm going to do my little perfect square trick where I say I'm going to add h squared, which is 25, and then immediately take it again. And I can't forget my +7. So I've just added 25 and taken 25. Okay, now if I look at this part of the equation, that is my perfect square. Which means that if we look at the number 25, we need 2 factors of that add to -10. The 2 factors are -5 and -5. So my factorized form of that quadratic is x take 5. Actually, I'll write it out in full this time. X take 5 and x take 5. -25 plus 7 is -18. So I'm just going to simplify that part of it. X take 5 times x take 5 is x take 5 squared, take 18. Now this is almost in vertex form. Remember, for vertex form we can't have this end part still in the brackets, so I'm just going to multiply that part of it out. So remember, because there's a 2 out the front, we multiply each term by 2. So the x take 5 can stay in the bracket. So 2 times x take 5 squared, 2 times negative 18 is negative 36. This here is now in vertex form. So let's just put the y there. So remember, that means that our vertex is at h, which is 5 in this case, and k, which is negative 36. So we've got our vertex, and if we wanted to plot that equation, you guys already know how to do that from there. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Good luck.